Jadeveon Clowney is making a homecoming back here in Carolina. Can he also make a homecoming back to the Pro Bowl in 2024? We'll talk about it right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers right now with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But starting on July 15th, we'll be back to your team every day, which, of course, is our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on July 26th, I'll be back answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. So either at me or DM me, but of course, follow me on Twitter at Julian Council to get your questions in when the time comes. We're back once again, breaking down the Carolina Panthers defense. On Wednesday, I talked about the defensive line, and on today's show, we're talking about the edge rushers, one of the premier positions in football, especially in the NFL, and a topic of conversation all throughout the offseason as we were trying to figure out whether the Panthers were going to pay Brian Burns or whether they were going to trade him. And we all know they traded Brian Burns not for what we would have hoped, but looking back at the trade, the Panthers turned it out to be a pretty good return for what they were able to use that Brian Burns compensation for in the draft so far, as they brought in some new players. And once Burns left and also Yetur Gross-Matos, Panthers need to add some players. And they added Jadeveon Clowney as one of their marquee free agency moves, signing him to a 2-year, $20 million deal with a max value of $24 million. So we're talking about the biggest name at the position in Jadeveon Clowney. And my question about Jadeveon Clowney coming here to Carolina this year, because he says every contract is a 1-year deal. The teams can decide to move on after a year. The player could go upstairs after the season and ask for a new contract. So he's here for at least a season. My question about Clowney is, can he be a suitable replacement for Brian Burns? And I understand $30 million for Brian Burns is a lot of money, especially for a player who did not have his best season last year. And Brian talked about how he watched Shaq Thompson go down and J.C. Horn go down, and the contract conversations that he had to hold in going into week one, how that played a role in just in the back of his mind. I don't want to get injured. Maybe he stepped back a little bit, didn't play with the same kind of tenacity. And also understand that Marquise Haynes was injured last year. He was supposed to be one of those rotational edge rushers on the other side. Justin Houston never lived up to the deal the Panthers gave him as another player to be a starter opposite of Brian Burns. So Brian had to face a lot of double teams, and he's also thinking about not wanting to get injured in a contract year, and that lets him not having his best season. Now, did he have a bad season? No. But did he have a season that would want you to pay him $30 million if you're the Carolina Panthers? No, as we saw, and this is a conversation that we've had, and yes, hindsight's 2020. Scott Fitter and Dan Morgan, who agreed not to do it, they should have traded him away to the Rams when they had the chance to get those 2 first-round picks. Probably keeps DJ Moore here in Carolina as they decide to trade up to number 1 to get Bryce Young. And who knows what the world looks like here in Charlotte had they done that. But they didn't do it, and Burns is no longer here. And Clowney is back home here in the Carolinas, having grown up, of course, in Rock Hill, played high school football at South Point, and then played at the University of South Carolina. So when you look at Brian Burns and Clowney, especially last year, I don't really think there's much of an argument. Jadeveon Clowney had a better season. Now, was he expected to do the things that Burns expected to do here in Carolina last year in Baltimore? No, he played a smaller role, but still had a great season. Looking at ESPN's pass rush win rate in 2023, Jadeveon Clowney ranked 5th among edge rushers, while Brian Burns just ranked 11th. Clowney had 9.5 sacks last season. Burns only had 8. If you look at their careers so far, Jadeveon Clowney in 52.5 games has, Jadeveon Clowney in 126 career games has 52.5 sacks, while Brian Burns in 80 career games has 46 sacks. So Burns has been the more prolific sack artist so far in the NFL, and he's also entering into what you would think is his prime, as he's only 25 years old, while Clowney is already over the age of 30 and would be in the twilight of his career likely here in the NFL. One area, though, where the Panthers are certainly upgrading when it comes to replacing Burns of Clowney is when it comes to run defense. The Panthers are terrible against the run last year. We talked about Shy Tuttle not living up to it, and Deshaun Williams last year, and Derek Brown having to fight double teams all year long, and it led to him having a record-breaking season and getting paid handsomely this offseason. But he needed a little bit more help from his friends. He's going to need help from Ashawn Robinson. He's going to need help from Shy Tuttle this fall. He's also going to need help from Jadeveon Clowney. And you look at the PFF run defense grades, Brian Burns' highest PFF run defense grade in his career is a 62.7. Clowney's lowest PFF run defense grade is a 62.8. He's had a 90 grade, which is elite. He's had an 80 grade multiple times, 70. That's where he typically is landing at a 74.5 last year. The Panthers, they may not have gotten a premier edge rusher in Jadeveon Clowney. At least his career hasn't led you to believe he really is. 126 games, 52 and a half sacks. Burns, 80 games, 46 sacks. You can do the math and see how many sacks kind of that the trend for Clowney is compared to Burns. So they might not have gotten somebody who is one of those premier edge rushers, but it did get somebody who's going to be much better against the run. And Clowney said a couple weeks ago when speaking at mandatory minicamp that stopping the run, it's a mentality. Pass rush technique, it's a little bit different. Takes a little bit more nuance and working on that skill where run defense, I'm not going to let anybody run over me. And he's go back and look at the tape. Who's run over me in my career? So that's one of the areas where the Carolina Panthers are certainly upgrading by swapping Burns with Jadeveon Clowney. And you look at Clowney's career, he hasn't really been the most consistent player, and injuries have played a large role in that his last 2 years in Houston. In 2017 and 2018. He had 9.5 and 9 sacks respectively, and was a Pro Bowler in each of those seasons. Then he's left. And just looking at the stats as far as sack numbers, which is only one piece of the puzzle and only tells a little bit of the story of who a player is. He had 3 sacks in 2019 in Seattle, 0 in 2020 in Tennessee, 9 in 2021 in Cleveland, 2 in 2022 in Cleveland, and of course 9.5 last year in Baltimore. And that's led him to not really sign the biggest of deals. He signed a 1-year, $13 million deal with the Titans, signed a 1-year, $8 million deal the first time with the Browns, and re-up for 1 year, 10. Then with the Ravens last year, he said he wasn't going to play because he knew that he was a good enough player, and he was prepared to sit out in 2023 if he wasn't going to get what he felt like he deserved, which he didn't think he was a league minimum guy. So the Ravens signed him on August 18th. Last year, gave him 1 year, $2.5 million. Now, after proving himself and the Panthers really having a massive need at that edge rusher spot, he gets 2 years, $20 million, $24 million max. And speaking of sack numbers just being one piece of the picture, PFF loves Jadeveon Clowney since he's left Houston. 2019, he had an 80.8 overall grade. That was 19th out of 104 edge rushers. 2020, 74.9 grade, 19th again out of 104 edge rushers. 2021, 66.5, those 51st of 110. So not a great season for him. Had 9 sacks, though, that season in Cleveland. So the sack totals are great. The PFF numbers didn't necessarily match as far as what I think the eye would have told you that season. 2022, 75.8 grade. I was 27th out of 119. In that year, he had 2 sacks in Cleveland. And then in 2023, last year, an 82.9 grade, 18th out of 112 edge rushers, and 9.5 sacks. So he's upticking after some up and down as far as sack totals, but really fairly consistent Pro Football Focus numbers. And he said when he's healthy, he's a Pro Bowler. He has not been a Pro Bowler since 2018, and he was healthy last year in Baltimore and was not a Pro Bowler. So we will see. He's going to get opportunities. The only problem is I am concerned what's going to be opposite of Jadeveon Clowney and whether he's going to have to face a ton of double teams this year and if that's going to hinder his ability to make plays. And also, can he stay healthy? Obviously, an important signing for the Carolina Panthers. Awesome to have him back home in Charlotte area. Of course, going up in Rock Hill. Would be nice if he can convince his friend and former teammate Stephon Gilmore to come to Carolina as well. But money, of course, is always a big discussion point when it comes to those contracts of players of their ilk. We will see. But I think this is obviously a great time for Carolina. I think he'd be a key player for him. Needs to produce. Getting 9.5 sacks again would be great. He can get to double digits. That would also be awesome, but should be an upgrade in the run game. I just wonder what else is there in that outside linebacker room that is going to aid Jadeveon Clowney this season in Carolina. And we'll talk about the rest of the edge rusher depth here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts, your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Heading into 2024, I'm not necessarily concerned about the production that Jadeveon Clowney is going to give the Panthers. If he's healthy, he believes he's a Pro Bowler. That has not been the case since 2018. He was healthy last year, playing not a marquee role for the Baltimore Ravens, but playing his role, and he played it very well, having 9.5 sacks and being graded as one of the top 18 edge rushers in the NFL in 2023. I think he's going to get an opportunity to be great against the run, to be able to get those sack totals once again. But I also think he's going to face a lot of double teams, because I have a lot of concerns about the rest of the edge rushers here in Carolina heading into the 2024 season. So listen to me here. Jadeveon Clowney, while I don't know if he's going to be better for the Panthers than Burns would be in this upcoming season 2024, I do think he will be a solid player for Carolina. That is my expectation. And really, when you pay him the kind of money that the Panthers are paying him, he damn well better be a really good player for them in 2024. The rest, that's where I really have a big concern about this group. DJ Wonnum was the first big edge rusher signing this offseason, coming over from Minnesota. He signed a 2-year, $12.5 million deal last year with the Vikings, made 14 starts in 15 games of 8 sacks, 62 tackles, and seven tackles for loss. And he certainly benefited from Danielle Hunter being on the other side of him. And he would benefit again this season with having Jadeveon Clowney on the other side of him. He has 23 career sacks through his first 4 seasons in the NFL, all of which with the Minnesota Vikings. His PFF grades aren't the best, as far as like they wouldn't necessarily excite you when you hear the numbers I just gave you before. Overall PFF grade last year, 62.3. That was 74th out of 112 edge rushers. Run defense grade, 68.6, 37th out of 112 edge rushers. And in pass rush grade, he had 8 sacks. Remember this? It was only 86 out of 104. He created 38 total pressures, 6 hits, 23 hurries, and again, had 8 sacks. PFF actually credited him for having 9 sacks last season in Minnesota. When healthy, this is a guy that you look at who potentially could be one of your cornerstone players defensively for the next 3 to 4 years. The problem is right now, he's recovering from a partially torn quad, which is something he suffered late in the season last year in Minnesota. He was not out there for OTAs or mandatory minicamp, as far as not being able to be on the field, because he's still recovering from that. And when Dave Canales was asked about it, he said he still has a ways to go. And that is concerning. I told y'all here on the show, and this is a big reason why you listen to Locked On Panthers. I had a conversation with somebody close to the team, and they were telling me, Wonnum, don't know if he's going to be good to go right away. And I was like, are you telling me pup? They're like, I'm not telling you pup, but there's a little bit of a setback there. And he did. Canales mentioned that he had to get something else cleaned out, and it was going to take a little bit more time. So we'll see. We are only a couple of weeks away. On July 23rd is when the veterans have to report. We're sitting here on July 5th. So 18 days away, DJ Wonnum needs to be ready to go. And so I would not be surprised if he maybe starts off on pup, or if it's just going to be one of those slow ramp ups for him, as he wasn't a part of the offseason program. It's a big reason why the Player Association was talking about potentially reworking the entire offseason so there could be a longer ramp-up period to really getting to training camp. It would benefit a guy like DJ Wonnum, but maybe not, because this really would be starting right now. But they are going to change the offseason schedule. We'll see. That is concerning, that a guy that you're expecting to be a starter for you has not been healthy so far and may not be 100% when the season starts. We will see how that works out, but not great news for Carolina to spend money on Wonnum and him not be ready to go, at least right now. Hopefully by training camp and the preseason, really week 1, he will be, but how far behind will he be coming into a new scheme and not having been out there on the field throughout the offseason? DJ Johnson, the Carolina Panthers decided that they were going to use one of the McCaffrey picks to trade up from 93 to 80 with Pittsburgh to draft DJ Johnson, a project edge rusher out of Oregon, a Jadeveon. Allegedly a big fan of DJ Johnson, big reason why the Panthers took DJ Johnson, the reason why when we were talking about Scott Bitter and all those trades that he made and draft picks, I always had to let y'all know, collaborative process here in Carolina. He's not the only one calling the shots. And there was a guy in Jadeveon who really liked DJ Johnson. And how did DJ Johnson reward him as a rookie? Well, 13 games he played, made 3 starts, logged 29% of defensive snaps in those games, 16 combined tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and a big fat goose egg in terms of sacks. He blitzed 12 times last year and had 1 pressure, according to Pro Football Reference. PFF says he logged 83 pass rush snaps with 3 hurries and 3 pressures. Not great. PFF overall grade, 50.4. Run defense grade, he actually qualified for this, 53.1. That was 88th out of 112. Edge rushers, pass rush grade, 53.3. Not the best thing for a 25-year-old second-year player to put up those numbers as a rookie. And now looking at things, Clowney, Wonnum, we don't know what his status is going to be. DJ Johnson's the starter at the other edge rusher spot. And if you are an offense, who are you concerned about? Jadeveon Clowney, the former number 1 overall pick who had 9.5 sacks last year and has been a solid player, if not mercurial at times? Or are you worried about DJ Johnson, the guy who's damn near 26 and has logged 0 sacks and 1 tackle for loss in his 1 year in the NFL? Yeah, I'm worried about Clowney. So Clowney's going to face double teams. Even if Wonnum's healthy, he's going to have to prove it first. I think teams will respect him. Obviously, way more they're going to respect DJ Johnson. But DJ's got to have to take a next step immediately. We need to be hearing reports about him at training camp, coming out there with his hair on fire, playing his tail off. Need to see him in the preseason. We talk about, all right, what about the preseason matters? I think DJ Johnson playing well in the preseason would matter a great deal. And I don't know how much the defense is going to play. I would expect that he would play a little bit more than the typical starter would. Clowney, he does not need to play at all. Johnson, I wouldn't even be opposed if he played the whole damn game because the guy needs reps. And I'm concerned about him right now being that starter as long as Wonnum is out. And if something were to happen to Clowney or Wonnum, again, knock on wood, not a good situation. Jadeveon Clowney, former first-round pick out of LSU, has been a complete bust so far. Played in 57 games in Jacksonville, made 11 starts, 5 career sacks. Last year, though, he had 2 of ththose 5 career sacks, 13 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 14 total pressures last season, 6 hits, 6 hurries, and 154 pass rush snaps, according to PFF. His overall grade was a 54.7, so woof. Run grade was a 58.0, pass rush grade, 58.2. He did not qualify for enough snaps for any of those to be ranked among the top 112 edge rushers last year. Todd Wash was the DC in Jacksonville, now the D-line coach here in Carolina, so probably a big reason why Jadeveon Clowney is now a Panther. But again, we got another guy who has immense talent. He had a ton of talent coming to LSU, like the player, and just has not carried over to the NFL. Maybe this 3-4 scheme that they run makes a little bit more sense for him. He has sort of this similar build to a guy like Leonard Floyd, who really excelled in his defense back when he was the Rams. And he played really well last year, too, in a 3-4 scheme in Buffalo. My hope is that Chason can meet that potential. It's not like the Panthers don't have guys with potential. You have Clowney already. You have Wonnum, who has been a solid player as a number 2 or 3 option as far as the edge rusher rotation has gone in Minnesota. DJ Johnson, project, I don't know what his real potential is, but Chason was taken in the first round for a reason. And if he can reward the Panthers for their faith, hope in him this year, that would be great and would mean a great deal for this team. Looking at the rest of the depth chart, Amari Barno, unfortunately, we found this out during OTAs that he actually tore his ACL in week 16 versus the Packers. So his status is certainly up in the air heading into the season. Can't imagine having an ACL tear in late December that he would be ready to go for training camp, knowing how things worked out last year with Austin Corbett, different player, different position, understand all that. it's still an ACL tear. So we'll see how that works out for him. Eku Leota's back again, second year UDFA out of Auburn, played in 8 games last year, recording 4 tackles, played 44% of special team snaps, 15% on defense. Dealt with an injury in the spring, and he's another player where Dave Canales said he has a little bit of ways to go. So we'll see how that works out for him. Luigi Villain, third-year player out of Wake, played in 1 game last year. He's back here. Panthers signed a free agent, Cam Gill, who spent the last 4 years in Tampa, missed 2022 with a Liz Frank injury, but other than that, he played, had his 29 career tackles, 2.5 sacks, 1 tackle for loss. And look at special teams. This is how you make the roster if you're back at a roster kind of guy. 67%, 65%, and 81% of special team snaps played, respectively, in those 3 seasons he's actually played in Tampa. And then Kenny Dyson, a UDFA undrafted free agent out of Bryant University in Rhode Island. 47 games with Bryant. He had 25.5 sacks, 111 tackles, and 35 tackles for loss. 3-time all-conference selection, 1 time in the Northeast Conference, 1 time in the Big South Conference, and then 1 time in the Big South/OVC. Yes, conference realignment is happening also in the FCS, folks. That is the depth chart for the edge rushers here in Carolina. How many will they keep? How many really should they keep, knowing that Barno is injured? There's also concerns about Wonnum. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Comparison is the thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives. It might look like they have it all together on their Instagram, but in reality, they probably don't. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. We've taken a look at the Panthers edge rusher depth chart. Now let's take a look at how many will make the 53-man roster. Again, initial 53-man roster. The roster is never set unless you make the playoffs. Then, yes, it needs to be set. But up until then, it's very fluid. You'll see guys who will make the roster and then get cut the next day as the Panthers pick up guys on the waiver wire, and that will happen through the 18 weeks of the season coming up here in 2024. But looking at the edge rusher group, guaranteed roster spots, roster bubble, practice squad, the 3 categories have been breaking this all down. They kept 6 last year. Jadeveon is back again. You have the entire defensive coaching staff. Tim Lukabu is back coaching the outside linebackers. So how will they go about things this upcoming season? Jadeveon Clowney, clearly on the roster. DJ Wonnum, clearly on the roster. DJ Johnson, clearly on the roster. Now, Wonnum will be an interesting case if he's not ready to go. He's out for the first 4 weeks of the season, and he would not count against 53. This is something the Panthers have to do before the roster cutdowns. So we'll find out whether that's something that they're interested in doing. I think he's probably likely going to head there, starting in a training camp, and then at some point in time, the preseason, he'll be good to go. And the hope is he'll be ready to go week 1 in New Orleans. Those are the 3 guys who are definitely going to be on the roster. You pay Clowney, you paid Wonnum, and you just drafted Johnson last year into DC is a guy who really wanted him. Roster bubble. One guy who's going to really, I think, factor into how they go about the numbers is Amari Barno. He is not going to be on the 53. I would imagine, and it's hard to say, but if they keep him in Carolina, they can put him on PUP, and he won't count towards 53. So that will impact the numbers. And this is what I talked about the other day on Wednesday about the defensive linemen. They could keep 6. So they kept 5 last year, but knowing that a guy like Barno isn't going to be on the 53 because of his injury, the Panthers could decide to keep 6 defensive linemen and then only have 5 edge rushers, where last year it was 6 edge rushers and 5 defensive linemen. And I just look at the quality on the defensive line. I think there's more quality there than I see here at edge. And I understand that edge is important. You got to have guys getting after the passer. And this was a team that was dead last in the NFL in sacks and sack percentage and pressure percentage last year. So, or pressure rate rather, which is basically the same thing. So Barno, I don't think he's going to be healthy enough to make the 53. Cam Gill, just looking at the special teams numbers he played last year and really his 3 healthy seasons in the NFL, if a guy's playing 81% of special team snaps in his 4th year in the NFL, And now he's coming over here. The head coach was there in Tampa last year. Probably a big reason why he's here now. I'm guessing that guy's going to make the roster. You need guys who can play special teams. DJ Johnson played special teams last year. You're going to need Cam Gill to play special teams as well. Caleb Chason, a roster in Barno, Chason, and Gill are all roster bubble guys. I'm guessing Chason's probably going to be safe. They paid him a decent, I guess I'm trying to remember how much did they actually pay him. They paid him like a decent amount of money for him to probably be on the roster. Let me look at it. I'm looking at this in real time in my notes. They paid Chason, let's see, 1 year up to 5.25. So he's probably gonna be on the team. He may be a guaranteed spot. I'm not gonna say that, but he's gonna be on the team likely. So Clowney, Wonnum, Johnson, Gill, Chason, those are 5. If they're gonna take a 6th, probably would be Eku Leota because he played 44% of the special team snaps that are available to him in those 8 games he played last year. Coming out of Auburn, Luigi Villon, who is a practice squad guy, probably another practice squad guy. Kenny Dyson would think as a UDFA, he's going to be fighting to likely be on the practice squad. And if he can be on the roster, well, great for him. I look at Leota. Maybe he's a roster bubble guy. He probably makes more sense to be on the roster bubble than he does in the practice squad. So I'm going to actually move this up in my notes here, even though I'm already recording the show. So Cam Gill, Chason, Barno, who's probably headed to PUP, or if they just release him for being injured, like they did a couple of years ago with Troy Pride, the guy at Notre Dame who got injured in the preseason and came back the next year. There's we're just going to move on here. That's what they could do. New GM who was here when Barno was drafted, but still new general manager, new head coach. They could decide just to move on from Barno, which would be unfortunate for him. Has great speed. And I don't know if the last system fit him. I don't know if this system really fits him either. It's just tough to see a guy have to go through that, trying to make a roster spot, especially in his 3rd year when you would make a big jump from year 2 to 3. Would have been a great opportunity for him this fall, or this spring rather, and this fall, had he been able to stay healthy. We'll see how that works out. But I'm looking at it. Jadeveon Clowney, J.J. Wonnum, DJ Johnson on the roster. Cam Gill, I think, is probably going to make the roster. Chason, I think, will make the roster. And they're going to keep 6. Leota would be the next guy. Then the other guys, Luigi Villon and Kenny Dyson, likely headed towards the practice squad or just not being in Carolina at all. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all, subscribe, follow the show free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter, at Julian Council, where I'll be back with you on July 26th, answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. So tune in then. So here we go. You probably noticed if you are subscribed to the show over on YouTube, which I tell you to do every day, you probably noticed I've had a bunch of shows already loaded up, which is because I was going on vacation the week of the 1st through the 8th. So I will not be back with you until Wednesday, the 10th. Going to do 3 shows in a row on the 10th, on the 11th, on the 12th. So we're going to talk inside linebackers, going to talk corners, going to talk safeties, close out the end of next week. So I'm going to take some time off, let you know, 3 shows coming up next week. Then on the 15th, we're back a week before training camp to 5 days a week. So get pumped for that. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always, and forever keep pounding. And I'll talk to y'all on the 10th.